We've been trying to keep you abreast of the legitimate and reasonable police reform proposals that are out there, the ban on chokeholds, things like that. Well, the governor released a multi-point plan today of what she would accept in legislation, more or less laying out the framework of things that she would not veto. And it goes pretty far. Wanted to bounce this off of Pete Lucido, the chairman of the Senate Judiciary and Public Safety Committee, who's been working on a lot of legislation on his own. Senator, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, gang. Good afternoon, listeners.
A lot of stuff here that I think could probably get through the Senate right now, don't you?
Yeah, the chokehold one about on the way the governor put in her announcement is my Senate bill, and I want to thank her for the fact that we shouldn't have had this being going on as it is, but it's Senate Bill 968. And interesting enough, this bill was introduced because of some of the tactics that the police even say, and it's banned chokeholds, which is their rules and regulations and training manual that they must go by. So Senate Bill 968 is in the Senate. I'll be taking that up, and that bill completely bans chokehold, pressure to the windpipe, exerting force on somebody's windpipe when they breathe, unless it is to save the officer's life, which means if the officer's life's in jeopardy, we have another rule in law that says you must fight deadly force with deadly force. Otherwise, you don't do it.
So in other words, if the guy's on the ground with his handcuff behind him, you can't do it.
That's pretty much common sense. That's a common sense solution. Put it in the law and let's get it done. There's also the ban on no-knock warrants. Other states are following this. That's another bill that I've introduced. Banning no-knock warrants is simple. Police officers were not knocking and announcing. And that's what I learned in law school when I was there, that officers must knock and announce to execute a search warrant on a dwelling or a business. Well, they were walking in without announcing, and therefore they were getting shot at. People were wondering what the hell's going on, somebody walking into a house without announcing.
Right.
You do that to give notice to the individuals, whether good or bad, that's another discussion, but that's being banned in other states, and Governor Whitmer has taken the position we should have it in ours, and that bill has been already dropped. It's in, and I'll get you a Senate bill number as soon as it comes out of LSB, Legislative Service.
Okay.
Bill. There's also one more guy.
Okay.
Duty to intervene. You know, one of the biggest problems we saw on that video, when Mr. George Floyd, when he passed away, was that the other officers and they just watched. Well, an officer has a duty to intervene if they're seeing that a crime is being committed. My opinion, that was a crime. It was criminal activity to see, because he wasn't supposed to exert under their own rules pressure on the windpipe. So a duty for an officer to intervene, and that bill is also being put in. So it kind of covers the gamut. There's other things that she wanted done, but we need more of a discussion, because look, let me say this once and once only. Not every officer is a bad officer. It's a tough enough job.
Right.
I wouldn't want it. I wouldn't want my children to. It's a dangerous job, and it's becoming more and more dangerous. But bad cops need to be vetted out and get off the force. Go do something else.
One of the things that isn't mentioned in here, but we're hearing a lot about now, is the idea that these collective bargaining agreements that unions have with municipalities short-circuit a lot of the disciplinary processes, also will wipe complaints off of an officer's record so that sometimes that you can't see a pattern. Is that something that needs to be addressed as well?
I think so. I'm going to explain why. If I go ahead and I've been an Arizona cop for 25 years, I retired. I was young when I got on the force, say I was 20. I'm now 45 years old, if I did the math right. And I come to Michigan, I'm still useful as a police officer that's been trained. If there's been any manipulations and or some hidden things as a result of collective bargaining that other departments can't seize and see, we should have transparency. These are individuals that are literally sworn to serve the people and took an oath to uphold the law. And if they didn't do it on that department and we don't have notice or knowledge, it doesn't seem like a real good policy.
There are a lot of things in here that I would think we're not going to be defunding police, but we are going to be funding a lot of things, and that is more in-service training for officers to keep their licenses, authorize MCOLs, which has seen its civilian force severely cut, to audit law enforcement and establish penalties for agencies who don't comply with the reporting requirement. There were a couple of things in here that I wondered if they got your curiosity. Classify false, racially motivated 911 calls as a hate crime. So if there's a false report that was racially motivated, it would be a hate crime. Does that mean that Jussie Smollett would also be guilty of a hate crime in Michigan?
No, and here's the reason why. Prosecutors have, thin line rules on which to operate of whether or not the charges that an officer wants to bring, whether or not the prosecutor, the charging authority, so we have the officer who is doing the intake, doing the investigation, brings the evidence that he or she has at hand to the prosecutor's office, and they are the charging authority of the state. At the end of the day, if the charging authority can't make its case, they should not be bringing charges. And as such, if this 911 looks to perceive to somebody that it's a hate crime of some sort, then the best evidence is the tape that the 911 recorder has the person on and what was said, how it was said. I don't want to go afoul of the law. The law is written in such a way where, yes, there is some gray area sometimes, but there's also subjectivity in somebody's mind. If they believe that it was a hate crime and charge somebody with that, now we have a jury of our peers to bring the balance of whether they believe it was a hate crime too.
Well, it appears there's a lot of common ground here and things that she would approve. You folks are already at work on it. We'll hopefully see some bipartisan progress here. Pete Lucido, always a pleasure. Thank you, Senator.
You know what? Take care of yourself, Guy, and enjoy the sunshine, because there is a lot of good still in the world, even though we see a lot of ugly when we watch the television.
Well, and there's maybe more cooperation than we give you guys credit for, too, and we know we'll see some of it. Thanks, Senator.
Guy.